Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Well, what a week it has been. Two tragedies. A submersible imploded and 5 individuals died. Just a few days before, an overcrowded trawler in the Mediterranean Sea filled with refugees headed for Greece sunk. More than 300 refugees died. It is so typical of our world that the fate of the 5 captured far more attention than the fate of the 300. The loss of 5 is so much more manageable by our minds and by our emotions than the loss of 300. 2 weeks ago, we didn't know anything about the individuals on the submersible, but suddenly we cared. We cared deeply. Their loss was felt to be a personal tragedy to be mourned. I would add that the loss of millions is so much harder to be sincerely felt, to be truly comprehended, than the loss of the few. Such is human nature, I guess. Human nature is at the core of this week's Sedra. Korach, Numbers chapter 16, verse 1 and following. Moses and Aaron are accused by Korach and his followers of taking too much upon themselves. Moses, Aaron, Korach, all are Levites, though Korach represents a different branch of the same clan. For reasons that are not entirely clear, Korach and his followers, and by the way, some of those followers included some of the most significant individuals within the Israelite camp, challenged how the centralization of power somehow lifted Moses and Aaron above all of their cousins, embracing the kind of popularist rhetoric that remains so very popular today. Korach wanted to reshape that power structure, regardless of its divine origin, so that he might end up with a larger piece of the pie. The charges against Moses and Aaron in our Sedra are in sharp contrast to events related in chapter 11 of the book of Numbers, when Moses displayed an amazing willingness to share access to the divine spirit with others in the Israelite camp. Moses proclaimed then, "Would that all of God's people were prophets upon whom could rest the divine spirit." Moses was not at all interested then in preserving his unique access to God to the exclusion of others, but still he is now being accused in our Sedra by Korach of hoarding power. Shortly before the Korach incident, we find Miriam and Aaron, Moses' siblings, who were, let's face it, really partners in the leadership enterprise, spreading rumors about their brother, perhaps as a way of expressing their jealousy about Moses' direct access to God. By the way, this didn't end too well for Miriam. Our text this week has God strongly backing Moses and Aaron. More than 14,000 Israelites, followers of Korach, died in this rebellion. And Korach, what about him? Some say he was burned alive and then buried alive. Others say that Korach was swallowed alive by the earth and placed forever at the gateway to the land of the dead. There, Korach was condemned to forever proclaim, "Moses and his Torah are true, and my words are lies." It is possible to read these texts with a scholarly perspective, namely that over the centuries there were numerous power struggles for religious and political leadership within the Israelite community. Struggles that were then retrojected into our Sedra and into the Torah itself. History records that the struggles here led to the descendants of Aaron achieving priority over the descendants of Moses. Stories of Moses' family disappear from our texts, and all Kohanim and Leviim alive today are considered to be somehow descendants of Aaron, but not of Moses. For better and for worse, we are all Aaron's physical descendants and Moses' spiritual descendants. That same scholarship would also point to ample textual hints that the story of Korach was actually a conflation of other efforts to overthrow Moses. So we ask now, in 2023, what was certainly being asked thousands of years ago. What does it take to be a leader? Google, Dr. Google, is very helpful here. If you want to be a leader, you should be charismatic, intelligent, self-confident, determined, marked by integrity and energy, and it would help if you knew how to get along with people. By the way, it would also help if you were blessed by good luck and by a confluence of historical circumstances that would propel you forward no matter what your skills. The ancient Greeks had a different set of standards. For example, if you're not well educated, don't even bother to submit an application for leadership. The ill-educated Greeks, the ill-educated must not be judges. The ill-educated must not be political leaders. In fact, Greeks, democracy could be a dead end for any society. There is nothing quite as noble and exalted as a philosopher king. In the presence of such a leader, the rest of us could properly see our role as citizen soldiers supporting the establishment and making certain that the masses followed the law. The philosopher king's authority would flow from that person's mastery of all that needed to be known so that he could govern successfully. I think that many of us would likely feel that Moses' authority flowed not from any array of amazing interpersonal skills, but far more from his relationship with God. With all due respect for Moses, Moses was often impetuous, impatient, given to periods of deep insecurity and even depression. Moses was constantly in need of bolstering. I'm reminded of that time when, do you remember the story? In a battle against Amalek, Moses and the people would succeed only if Moses' hands were held upward. Moses was 80 years old. He couldn't keep his hands up forever, so Aaron and Hur held his hands heavenward, and as long as that was the case, the Israelites would persevere. Moses couldn't do it alone. Hovering over this discussion is the inescapable awareness that we in the United States are soon to be asked to choose our next leaders. So we ask, will we follow the Greek model, and look for the most charismatic, intelligent, determined, energetic candidates. And those, by the way, marked also by integrity and by great people skills. That's a great menu, right? That's terrific. Do we look for those who have a reliable support team, right? Capable and willing of holding their hands heavenward? Or are we expected to settle for those who have been propelled into the spotlight by historical circumstances over which they have little or no control? Or perhaps we should be reconciled by the notion that some of those demanding our attention today are doomed to be standing forever at the entranceway to the land of the dead, proclaiming, "Oh, we were liars." Our Sedra is a study of human nature. There is much that we can learn by studying Korach and his assembly. Shabbat Shalom. See you next week.